can always up your rent. I won't say always, but if you do your research and do your due diligence, a lot of the times if you do a renovation and you give some TLC, some tender loving care to your property, you can definitely improve your rents. If the tenant is good, the tenant's not giving you headaches, if the tenant pays on time every single month, but you really want $460, tenant's not willing to pay $460, seriously consider keeping them in the property. A bit of gratitude and a bit of recognition from your end, both to your tenant and your property manager, it can go a long way.
We believe every Australian deserves a right to own at the very least 5 investment properties. I'm Adrian Trimboli.
And I'm Frank Ambezi, and welcome to the Invest in You podcast.
Hello and welcome. Episode 22 of the Invest in You podcast. And in today's episode, we are talking about rental campaigns. What's considered a successful rental campaign, little tips and tricks on how to best navigate your way to a rental campaign. And just to recap who I am and why I believe I can add value to you in today's session, I've helped over 200 of our clients purchase properties, navigate through rental campaigns. I myself have purchased 9 properties in my time. So I understand rental campaigns. Rental campaigns are second nature to me. I've worked out what's worked. I've worked out what doesn't work. I'm going to be providing you some quick tips, things to look out for. But most importantly for yourself, this short podcast is going to teach you all of these things. So you don't end up with an investment property which isn't rented out for weeks on end or months. So let's get into it. Rental campaigns. What is considered a successful and unsuccessful campaign just in regards to time? We kind of illustrate this to every single one of our clients when going into it, and it's really about expectations. So 0 to 1 weeks is a phenomenal campaign. If it takes only less than a week to actually get your property rented out, it's phenomenal. 1 to 2 weeks, still a very, very good campaign. I title it a great campaign. 2 to 3 weeks is about average. So it's not great. It's not horrible. It's about average. 3 to 4 weeks is considered below average. And then 4+ weeks is seriously below average. It's actually considered a bad rental campaign. Again, this is in my opinion. But when does the time frame start? There's a few things here. So when the listing goes live and then when the tenant accepts the property. Not when the tenant moves in, because that could be weeks after, but when the tenant accepts the lease and accepts the rental, and then when the listing goes live. Now, why are these timelines important? Very, very important thing here. So I want to just highlight the fact that you don't want to start the timer. You don't want to kick off the timer if you have gone and made the decision to be a bit bullish. So let's run a live example. Let's say there's an appraisal. The property's been appraised at 520 to 540. That's the market average. That's the market rent. You've been a bit bullish. Your property manager's been a bit bullish, and you've gone for 560, 580. So you've seen, there's a rental crisis in Australia right now. You've seen what's out there. You want to have a crack at a bit higher because you feel like you're going to be able to achieve it. Great. Should you be starting the timer? Absolutely not. So I always like to start the timer when you're setting the rental at the fair market value. Okay, let's say 560 to 580. You're trying to get something that's not at fair market value, right? Now, I'm not saying don't go for it, right? But don't start the timer and don't measure the campaign and the success of the campaign based on 560 to 580. So let's keep running through the example. If you go for a higher return, right? I always like to keep. Let's say that appraisal's 540. You're going for 560. I like to allow that to run for 1 to 2 weeks. Now, if no one bites, think about bringing that back down after 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, back down to market rate. So if you do bring it back and it takes, let's say, another 1 to 2 weeks to rent the property out, then it was actually a good campaign. It only took you 1 to 2 weeks. It's only taking you 1 to 2 weeks at fair market value. Sure, it's now taking you 4 weeks, as I mentioned above. That's considered an average campaign. However, at the correct market rate, this is actually 2 weeks. A really, really good campaign. Now, a quick note here. Again, this is my personal opinion, and this is what I've found has worked the vast majority of times for the vast majority of our clients and our properties. I always like to go for the market rate. Now, why? Because one, getting the property leased out as quickly as possible to the best tenant is the most important. However, if you do go for above market rate and it takes you 3, 4, 5 weeks, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot. Now, why do I say that? Let's say that you find a tenant for $520 a week. Excellent. Now, over a calendar year, that equates to $27,040. Let's say that the market range was at $500 a week. That equates to $26,000 a year. So great, an extra $1,000 a year if you get it at $520 above the market rate. Excellent. However, the property's taking you 2 weeks or 3 weeks to rent out the property, right? Let's say the property at the high market rate, $520, it's taking you 3 weeks to rent out the property to find the tenant. Already that's cost you $1,500. So it's the exact same result, if not worse, actually, worse off by $480 or $460 over the calendar year. Plus, there's a bit of extra stress, second guessing what you've purchased, pointless. I rather get the property rented out at market rate, get them in within the week, raise the rents 1 year down the track, and ensure that you just have a good tenant in there, but at market range. That's my personal preference. Now, I will just say, right, there's been many times where in the first day or just upon settlement or even pre-settlement, there's 5, 10, 15 applications in the first day. Cool. No brainer on that, shoot for the stars. So I'm not always saying just go for market range. If there's data and if there's, applications coming in, obviously you shoot for the stars, right? Now, how do you work out your market rent, or how do you work out the rent? One, go to the property manager, use the property manager. The property manager is the professional in the region, in the area, very experienced, you would hope. So using the property manager. 2, comparable rents, seen property A, I've seen property B. I'm going to price it very similar, depending on the characteristics of those similar properties around. If there's not many comparable rents, what another avenue can go down is valuations. So valuations of properties sold and what they've also been rented out for. That's always something that is useful. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult because there's a lagging effect of, the property was sold here, settled 3 months ago. Market rents can change a little bit in that period, but overall, you can go off valuations. And then another one, which we always like to run kind of in-house for a lot of our clients, is checking how much a region has grown in a particular year. So let's say property was purchased 2022, that region, that suburb, the rentals have risen by 10%, something that you can run off also. A problem with this though, I see, and this is again goes back to the market value and the range that you accept a tenant for. I see this happening quite a bit with clients. So let's say a client purchased a property at the start of 2022 and they got above the market range. So say the range was 400 to 420, the client and the property manager shot for the stars and they got 430, 440. Awesome. They spent 12 months above market range. 2023 comes around. There's a new lease that's coming up. Interest rates have risen however many times over that whole period. And now you've been above the market range for the entire year, which is excellent. You go back to the data, the rental market has risen by 10%. You're now thinking, cool, I'm going to bump up my rent to 470, 480 from the 440 because, 10% above that. However, remember that you've been above the market range the entire year. So really, especially if it's at the lower end, right, of what it should be, 400, raising that by 10%, $40, your property manager very well may come back to you and say, hey, you can up your rent from 440, which is what it's been at the entire year, to maybe 450. You might go, well, hang on, that's only $10. That's not in line with what the rest of the market has done. But remember, you have already been above that range. And I see a lot of clients going, spiraling and going, oh, what's going on? This is too hard to hold, and really spiraling. It's just something to remember. Very, very small point, but I see it time and time again when clients of ours will will think, oh, hang on, the rental market's not growing in this area. Just something to consider. Look at it very holistically. Another point here is renovations, upping the rent, something we always try and look at. If you can spend $10,000 on a property, clean up a kitchen or do a small renovation, do a bit of paint, and you're able to up the rent by, say, $100 a week, it's an extra, $5,200 into your overall rental, to your overall cash flow. And now for $10K, ultimately, adding to call it the purchase price, that all of a sudden bumps up the yield dramatically. So always something to consider. I have a property in my portfolio. As soon as I bought it, I had to spend an extra $20,000 on it. New aircon, bit of a clean up in the kitchen, some paint, a few other works. And since then, which was now 2.5 years ago, not only have I gotten exceptional capital growth, over 50% capital growth in that period, I've also been able to raise my rents by $180 in the last 2.5 years. Now, partly due to the renovation, I will say, partly due to the rental crisis and that region being so hot from a rental point of view. But it's always something good to consider. You can always up your rent. I won't say always, but if you do your research and do your due diligence, a lot of the times if you do a renovation and you give some TLC, some tender love and care to your property, you can definitely improve your rents and improve your yields. So definitely something to consider. The next thing here is, and this is, I've dealt with this many a times, and again, this is just my personal opinion. I've also had a lot of our clients go through this, removing a tenant to get a higher rate. Now, again, you really need to just look at this holistically. You look at a property, you're getting $440, you want to move it to $460, $20 extra, $1,000 over a year. If the tenant is good, the tenant's not giving you headaches, if the tenant pays on time every single month, but you really want $460, tenant's not willing to pay $460, seriously consider keeping them in the property. Okay? Now, again, use logic here. If you've got 50, if you've got 10 applications and they're all saying $470, $480, $490, sure, be the investor. Sometimes you need to be a little bit, I won't call it greedy, but sometimes you need to think about your cash flow. When I say sometimes, all the time. However, remember, getting a new tenant, you've got to pay letting fees to the property manager, which is usually 1 week's worth of rent. Is your $400 or $500, whatever it is. You need to then have the risk of, is this tenant going to pay on time? Are they going to be awesome tenants? There's that. There's also, generally speaking, when a new tenant comes in, they've got all these wonderful thoughts of, hey, we want an aircon here. Hey, we want this. Hey, we want that. So in the long run, or even in the short run, really, it can actually cost you a lot more to actually bring on a new tenant. So just something to consider. Another quick little tip here. I've been doing this now for about 5 years, 6 years in my own personal portfolio, is buying presents for your tenants and your property managers. Now, I love buying presents for tenants annually. I guess equally for property managers, right? And it goes a long way. Now, something small, $50 gift can get a bit pricey if you've got 10 plus properties. I get it. But buying presents for your tenants and your property managers, something very funny about giving. When you give and you're good to people, guess what? They feel obligated to do the right thing by you. Crazy. No, but seriously, your PM will remember it. At any time your name pops up, they've just got an extra incentive to act fast. Now, obviously, they're going to be as good as they can because that's their role, right? But a bit of gratitude and a bit of recognition from your end, both to your tenant and your property manager, it can go a long way. Now, you don't want to just do something and look for a return and get it back, but just do it. It'll help. Trust me, it's worked for me year after year. Another thing, seriously consider, property manager is the professional. Again, this is an extremely personal view, and this is really the way that I see things, and it's worked for me. It may work for you also. The property manager is going to every open home, screening every tenant, interviewing every tenant, character referencing every tenant. They are the professional. My way to operate is I trust first. Now, I know it's very, very hard to do, and a lot of people will shake their head at what I'm saying here. However, it's just the way that I live my life. I trust a professional because I believe that they can do a better job than what I can, and I allow them to do what they do. Now, if there's a stuff up, then we've probably missed something. The property manager's missed something, and you deal with it then. However, I like to trust first, give them the benefit of the doubt, They are the professional. Allowing them to do that and not sit on their shoulder and watching every move. Obviously, be diligent. I'm not saying that at all. Definitely be diligent, but allow your property manager and give them the respect to actually do what they do without intervening all too much. The final one, bit controversial, is pets. I see a lot of clients saying, no pets, no cats, no dogs. They'll ruin the house. I don't want them. 60%. So it's a range of, I believe, 30% in Australia to 60% of Australians own pets. So wiping out pets completely, again, it's just going to lessen the avenue. It's going to lessen how many people. It's going to just shorten how many applications you're going to receive and how many awesome tenants are actually going to be open to renting your property. More conditions, harder to lease. Pretty simple. It's the same as buying property. The more conditions you have, the more subject to this, subject to that, the less chance you're actually going to give yourself for, an owner to come and say, yep, we'll accept it. So again, something to consider. I'm a bit of a lover of animals. I've got 2 dogs, very respectful dogs that don't rule the house at all. So I may be very biased here, but again, that's worked for me. I've always allowed dogs or cats or animals in the house. It's never backfired for me. So again, very, very personal opinion, but it's worked for me. And that is it. It's a pretty quick and easy podcast, this one. 15-minute action-packed, right? Let's just quickly summarize what we went over. 1, the timeframes. So what a successful and an unsuccessful rental campaign actually looks like. When to start the timer, and especially if you're going above market range, don't start the timer. How to work out your rents. So what's actually look at. So there's a few things. There's data, there's comparable rents, and there's also valuations. And then definitely something that you need to take into consideration is if you've spent a year above market range and you then do your research, come the new lease, come time for the new lease, you need to and you've worked out that that particular region, that particular suburb, the rental market has grown by 10%. You need to compare that to where the market was at a year ago. Not go off the rental market's grown by 10%. I'm at 440. You're going to raise it to 480. No, you need to compare it to where the market was at a year ago. Super, super important because people get really, really unstuck. Renovations can really improve the yields, really improve your cash position. Removing a tenant to get a higher rent, look at it holistically. Is it going to actually add more money to your pocket? Also consider, is it going to pester you? Is it going to cause more stress? Is it going to cause problems down the track? Quick little tip on buying presents for your tenants and your property managers. It does go a long way. My personal recommendation of treating the PM as the professional. They are the professional, giving them the benefit of the doubt. That's very, very personal. You know how you got to do it. And then the final one, pets. Not considering pets or putting a big X through pets right away is going to minimize really how many people have access or will put their hand up to rent a property in your property. So I hope that was awesome. I hope that was action-packed. Use these things, take them away, and I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. To your success.